Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Okay, we're real hot. 1, 2. Check 1, 2. 1, 2. Okay. That was not planned. That was too late. You ready, Nick? Take it from the top. Very good. Thanks, everybody, for your patience again. Real quick, just some housekeeping before we send it right over to Dr. LaSousa. The Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure to the right of the public to have advance notice of, to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the School District of the Chatham's Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted in the Board Administrative Offices, sent to the clerks of the Chathams, the Borough Township, the Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and the TAP. Mr. DeQuilla, would you mind taking attendance?
Sure. Ms. Ciccarelli.
Here.
Ms. Clark. Mr. Del Sandro. Here. Ms. Kenny.
Here.
Ms. Ross.
Here.
Mr. Ryan.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Dr. Zhang.
Here.
And Ms. Weber.
Here.
8 present and accounted for.
Excellent, thank you. If you're able, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is to my left, your right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Excellent, very good. So just to open it up, I didn't really have any comments except late-breaking news. Some of you may recall that there was a fairly notorious lawsuit against the district over the last several years, since 2018, March 6, 2018, but who's counting? It had been through the court system several times. We won the first time. Mrs. Hilsenrath appealed it. We won a second time. Mrs. Hilsenrath appealed it a third time. And we just found out that we received summary judgment in favor of the school district once again. And again, just to repeat, summary judgment means it was so baseless that the judge felt it couldn't go on to even a jury phase, a trial phase, whether by jury or by bench. So that should hit the papers relatively soon. It'd be nice if she would stop suing us because it cost the district a considerable amount of money, and you figured after the third time, maybe, give it up. And again, the sad part is, on their side, it's being paid for by the Thomas More Law Center. On our side, it's being paid by you, by the residents of Chatham. So by my count, it's good guys 3, Libby 0. So I would, if she's not here tonight, usually she is, I would implore her to maybe stop with the lawsuit since her son's in college now. And to my knowledge, he hasn't converted to Islam. So that's just an opening there. I say it with some tongue in cheek, but it's extremely costly to litigate, and it takes our teachers and our resources away from the district, away from students. So it would be a pleasure to put that behind us. But more important, we're going to move right over to Dr. LaSousa's superintendent report, and I believe you have a presentation again, Dr. LaSousa.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Weber. Since our last meeting, we've had ongoing discussions about the 2 ballot proposals that will appear, or that do appear on this November's ballot. And so I have a very brief presentation just to clarify a couple of items that the Finance Committee and others wanted me to do my best to clarify. So I have to ask you all to go down to the seats again if you can, even though it's tight. All right, so like I said, this isn't meant to be an exhaustive presentation, just to touch on a few items and points to help provide some clarification to questions that have come up here and there. So first is just to provide a little context again, and make it clear that the way the law in New Jersey works now is that a school district, a board of education for a school district, cannot pass a tax levy or a budget that includes a tax levy that is greater than the prior year's tax levy plus 2%. And if a board wants to exceed the tax levy, it must do two things. It must present a separate proposal for the amount by which it wishes to increase the tax levy beyond 2%, and it must identify exactly what those funds would be utilized for. In other words, the Board of Education can't simply say, we want to increase the tax levy by 6% without specifying exactly what that money would be used for. So that differs from the old days. So the old days, and there are a few people in this room who remember these days, back prior to 2012, this is from my first budget presentation actually, February of 2012. Back in those days, there was an April vote on the budget, and the board was able to issue a tax levy at really any amount it wanted, pretty much, and then would have to go to the voters, and the voters would decide in April if that budget carried forward or if it was rejected. If it was rejected, it then went to the municipalities who determined a dollar figure that the board must cut. But these were the old days. So today, this can't happen. Today, what happens is that if a board wants to go beyond 2%, it must specify how much and what it is spending the money on, and then present that to voters, which is why there are two questions on this proposal, or on this ballot, I should say. Second point of clarification that the Finance Committee wanted me to just highlight was that back in the 2019-20 school year, we had a lot of discussions at the board level about a potential referendum. Actually, roughly 1 week before schools closed for the pandemic, we sent a survey out to the community where we had identified a series of potential capital improvements that fell under three categories. And the categories were infrastructure, safety and security, that included secure vestibules at all the entrances, and then curricular and extracurricular improvements, and they included things like additional turf fields, upgrades to our art rooms in Chatham High School, and items like that. The total dollar amount in the potential, again, it never came to fruition, but the potential referendum came in at $15 million. And what happened was the pandemic hit. Obviously, things were put on hold for a while. A year later and 2 years later, the board again looked at potentially unearthing the referendum and going back out. But when we did that, and Mr. Gilfillan was the chair of the Finance Committee at the time, the new cost estimates that we received from our architect were much, much higher than the $15 million that we had gotten originally. Labor expenses went up, materials costs went up, and of course interest rates were much higher. So that prompted the board to push aside the referendum planning and instead try to devote as much money on an annual basis over the past 5 years to capital reserve, and then withdraw funds from capital reserve to take on the most urgent of infrastructure and other needs. So since 2019-2020, the board has planned through the budgeting process and through its capital reserve accounts to tick off as many of the projects that it could that had been identified in the referendum. And they include things like these, like upgrading the alarm systems in certain buildings, HVAC equipment that is well beyond its lifespan. A lot of our HVAC equipment actually is original to the buildings in which they're housed, and we can't even find parts to some of that stuff. So we have a lot of HVAC work to do. Of course, roofs and bollards are those yellow, iron items that you see in your driveways that protect crowds if they're gathering outside. They're like a tier 1 security measure. And we tried to pay off as much of this as we could, or offset the costs with safety grants. The bollards were paid for in large part through the safety grants they qualified, and through the federal dollars that we received during the pandemic. Even so, there's more to be done. And as we touched on at the last meeting, the state opened up a ROD grant. ROD stands for Regular Operating District. The state set aside money in the current fiscal budget for districts to apply for grants. We put in for everything we could that we thought might qualify at the end of the day, and we're still waiting on absolute final confirmation of this. But the state opted to fund roofs and HVAC systems across the state, and some of the other categories for reimbursement were not funded by the state. So we tried, but we didn't succeed in getting the secure vestibules paid for, at least a portion of it reimbursed by the state. So all of the preceding is just to say that the board, through the leadership of the Finance Committee, Mr. Smith now, Mr. Gilfillan before him, planned and worked on hitting and addressing as many of the priorities that it could within the operating budget by using and drawing on capital reserve on an annual basis. Yet, there are items that are left to be done, such as the secure entrances at all of the buildings, and obviously, as we've talked about before, the paraprofessional staff, which I'll get to in a second. The other big area that just is worth trying to kind of summarize as best I can, even though I'm not an expert in this area, is just the way that the taxation works in the district, especially because the borough went through a reassessment and there are questions about that. So first and foremost, we're a regional school district. That's a little different than other districts. Some of our neighboring districts, like New Providence or Madison or Summit, they're not regional districts because they don't comprise more than one municipality. We comprise more than one municipality, and the way that school taxes are apportioned in New Jersey, when there is more than one municipality at play, is that the taxes are apportioned and distributed based on equalized valuation. And what equalized valuation means, more or less, is that the state has a process by which it takes the assessed properties in a municipality and assigns them a value that might be different than what the municipality assesses its property. And they do that every year by October 1, and then they publish in tax tables that are available on the state website what the equalized valuations are of every municipality in the state. And those are the valuations that must be used when the school district constructs its budget. So the 2023 October 1st tax table just was released 2 weeks ago. That is what determines how taxes are distributed in the Chathams when the school district sets its budget. So to just get into the weeds of that a little bit, the current proposals that are on the ballot in November had to be submitted with our budget in April. And that budget and these proposals were, the estimates for them in terms of tax impact were based on the 22 tax tables from the New Jersey Division of Taxation. So we have two municipalities, obviously. If you looked at the 2022 tax table and you looked at what Chatham Borough assessed its property at and then what the assessed value of property was according to Chatham Township, these are the two figures that you'd find. So $2 billion and change in the borough, $3.3 billion in the township. The state comes in and takes a look at those amounts and establishes an equalization ratio, which is kind of like the ratio of what the municipality says is the property's worth and then what the true value of that property is, right? So everyone knows if they haven't had a revaluation of their home in 35 years, let's just say, and their home is assessed at $300,000, but if they put it on the market, they would get $850,000. The assessment, you know, from their municipality is not in line with the true value of their home or their property. So in order to try to keep things level, the state and the county, and through the counties, but the state has this mechanism to ensure that there's no incentive for communities to not seek revaluation. There's no incentive for communities to try to lowball their valuation, because if they do that, then it obviously wouldn't be fair in any kind of situation where there's more than one municipality on which taxation is being apportioned, whether that's the county level or it's a school district level. So the county, or the state through the county, publishes what they call the true value of property, or the equalized value of property. And in Chatham Borough last year, 2022, This was the amount that the state determined was the total value of property in Chatham Borough, and this was the amount that the state determined was the total value of property in Chatham Township. So you can see it's more, but the difference is greater in the borough than the township because the borough's own assessment of property was a little bit lower in terms of ratio than the township. If you looked at what just got published and you went on their website for October 1, 2023, what you see if you just compare these numbers is the borough's reassessment shows up here. So whereas the borough had its property valued at 2.1 billion, excuse me, a year ago, now it's 3.1 billion. It jumped. And the township went up a little bit, but not, an extraordinary amount. The equalization ratio is reflected here. So the county, or the state through the county, actually thinks that this amount is a little bit high compared to true value. And so when you come to the true value of property or the equalized value of property, you can see if you look at this number here, the 2.8 billion, it's not that much different than the 2.7 billion. And the total aggregate and the ratio of the value of property in each municipality is roughly the same last year to this year. So one of the reasons why, even though there's a reassessment that happens, doesn't have a big impact on the actual taxes that are then collected on a property is, number one, that equalization figure. That equalization is designed to level the field so there aren't wild fluctuations every time a municipality reevaluates or reassesses, and also because the tax levy works with only one figure that matters. It's the prior year tax levy and it's not anything else. So it doesn't matter if the school district calls a tax levy, it can only be 2% more than the prior year levy. It doesn't matter what happens with reassessments or the actual value of property in a municipality. So again, our estimates that went out were only available based on the 2022 tax tables, because that was what had been published at the time. And our questions, our proposals that appear on the November ballot, also had to be submitted in April, last April. So they had to be based on the October 1, 22 tax tables by law. So just wanted to kind of clarify that. So when you look at the annual tax impacts, these are from, and their estimates, but what has happened because the borough reassessed and probably just about every single property in Chatham Borough gained in its assessed value, the tax rate itself plummets, it drops because there's less, if the house was worth $500,000, but now it's worth $800,000 and roughly the same amount of taxes are being collected, the actual tax rate is much lower. So these were just assessments based on, estimates rather, based on what was available in April when the budget was submitted, because this had to be approved by the executive county superintendent. In reality, the numbers for Chatham Borough will be much less because every property essentially is worth more, so the tax rate will be lower. It's confusing, but it's important to recognize that. Just a couple quick slides here. Security vestibules. So the first question is about security vestibules. This is a photograph of a security vestibule just taken off of the internet. So all it is two sets of locking doors, both of which are mechanically locked, both of which have a rating, like a fire rating or a penetration rating, so that if a visitor rather is buzzed into the school, they remain in this area and they can't proceed directly into the rest of the building. And this dramatically reduces the number of interruptions and penetrations into the school on a daily basis, because a parent can drop something here like a lunch, a parent can wait here for their child to be dismissed for a doctor's appointment. It contains visitors, and it's considered a Tier 1 security measure by law enforcement agencies. It's framed as a permanent part of the budget because of some of what I just tried to explain before. The funds, if this were approved, would be immediately used to build secure entrances at all the schools, but then in the out years, because the funds would become a part of the operating budget moving forward, then they can be directed at other security-related costs, such as the employment of police and security staff members, such as cybersecurity subscriptions and measures we have in place, and other target hardening types of investments. In terms of the paraprofessional question, so the paraprofessional question has to do mostly, not entirely, but mostly with special education services. I'll point out that mental health related services, many of them are included in special education services, and they're not optional. They're required in the programs of many of our students. And they're designed, anything that's outlined in the individual programs of our students are designed so that those students can access their education under the law. And when I say law, I mean federal law, I also mean state law. And in a number of instances, paraprofessionals are part of that program. They are necessary, they're critical for students to be able to access their education. And not having the ability for students to access their education ends up leading to higher costs because it can lead to more acute forms of services and also to out-of-district placements in a less or in a more restrictive environment and not in the least restrictive environment. So, on the paraprofessional side, it was in these years actually that the district and the board at the time decided to reduce paraprofessionals to half-time status in order to avoid paying health benefits. You can understand why the board and the administration at the time may have done that, because costs were rising dramatically. Enrollment was also rising precipitously during this period of time. So the cost-saving measure at the time probably made a lot of sense in order to lessen the blow of budgetary increases. But we've reached a point now where it's not tenable and it is hampering our ability to attract and retain individuals for these really important positions. That's it in terms of the clarifications. I invite the board members back up to discuss anything that they would like.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Oh, Nick, just let us know if you can't hear us. Thank you, Mike, for the overview again, the math lesson, and some additional clarification. If the board would just indulge me a minute, I just wanted to clarify a few points. Oops, sorry. I got to keep this closer. Okay, sorry. So there was a flyer going around, encouraging people to vote no on these questions. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to clarify and address some things that were incorrect or misleading. And again, it was unsigned, so I don't know who wrote it. But the fact that it's unsigned means it either lacks conviction at best and it's self-serving at worst. But so the unknown author at least correctly acknowledged the challenges that the district faces in spiraling special education costs. But not surprisingly, the content in the letter demonstrates that they have no understanding of the responsibilities that the district has based on the federal Individuals with Disabilities Act. It requires, the district to provide a free and appropriate education for all, not just their kid, but for every student. One of the guiding principles of the school district of the Chatham is to ensure that there is equity and opportunity for each student to access curricular and extracurricular programs. The flyer was most egregious on the paraprofessional question, which is the one I'm trying to clarify. At one point, the flyer said that healthcare benefits for paraprofessionals were tangential or indirect to the district's core educational mission, and that's purposely misleading. Paraprofessionals, as Dr. LaSousa just mentioned, are essential in providing access to curricular and co-curricular programs, and increasingly we are unable to adequately staff these staff members. If you notice, at every single board member, we are accepting multiple resignations of paraprofessionals because they're going to neighboring districts that offer benefits. You know, it's impossible to keep these positions filled, and it actually exposes us to some liability if we don't have, as Dr. LaSousa said, part of the program for the student in place. The flyer also calls on the board and the administration to lobby Trenton for our fair share of the state aid. We do that already. I know that you can't be at every meeting, but keep up. We talk about that constantly. Keep up, we do that. The real issue, though, is the unfunded mandates from the federal government on the Disabilities Act. When it was imposed and passed originally, Congress pledged 40%. 40% of the cost would be covered. That never happened, never happened. Today, the funding is only at 10%. The author, again, the unsigned author, also correctly recognized the inflation pressures on residents in town. They said everything costs more, your household costs went up. You know, why is the school district any different? The school district is impacted by every one of those elements: transportation, utilities, energy, healthcare, but it's impacted on a much larger scale. And despite all of these challenges, despite the unfunded mandates, the inflation, 8 to 10% expenses, in the past 6 years, the board has kept the taxing authority at or below 2%, even though the Finance Committee had reported that we have taxing authority above 2%, but chose not to exercise that. Instead, we chose to put questions out to the public to vote yes or no, up or down. And the reason we've been able to stay with the tax increase at 2% or less in the recent years, despite that, all those inflationary measures and healthcare and additional programming and security that we've paid for, excuse me, we have been able to pay for that. We've been reducing staff commensurate with enrollment. A lot of people said, oh, your enrollment's going down. You should have a ton of money left over. We've been reducing staff. We've been receiving increases in state aid a little bit each year, and we also had additional revenue from the tuition from full-day kindergarten and some tuition students. So again, just to go over how many staff members we reduce. When people retire, we don't replace them. We reduced one class position at Milton Avenue School, 2 at Lafayette, 2 at CMS, 2 at the high school, and 1 assistant principal. So that's 8 positions just last year alone, and it equates to $580,000. Again, declining enrollment alone isn't going to be a complete cost. It's not going to mitigate the cost completely. You're going to have a decade's worth of declining enrollment to really move the budget. Can we cut more? Probably. Should we cut more? Okay. We could cut more staff. That would increase class sizes to 30 plus a classroom. Okay, that's one choice. Can we cut the STEM programs? Maybe. Robotics? Okay. Performing arts, athletics, all on the table. Cut the technology budget? Sure. That can be, we could talk about that. We can cut all the AP programs. I mean, if some of these questions don't pass, at some point, everything's going to be on the table, and the Finance Committee is going to have to discuss with the administration and come up with a priority list. I don't want to pick on our neighbors to the west. Oh, typically they're sitting over here. But you may be reading in the paper that some of our neighbors, they're asking the residents for an $80 million referendum to improve their infrastructure and costs that weren't addressed over the years. And again, we empathize with that. This board and previous boards and future boards absolutely understand when you have 8 to 10% increases in expenses, but yet only 2% increase in your revenue, it forces you to kick the can down the road further and further until you get to a point where you just have to ask for a huge sum of money. Chatham's not had to close schools because it's too hot. We haven't had to have early dismissals because our air conditioners weren't work. We didn't have to close any buildings because the electrical system broke down and we were waiting for parts. This is not by accident. This is a result of decades. I don't just mean these 9 people. I mean decades worth of these 9 people. Deliberate fiscal management, putting money in capital reserve and drawing from our capital reserve. We're saving, we spend it, we save it. You know, if a roof needs replacing, we're not asking for tens of millions of dollars because our infrastructure is crumbling. We're not asking money to fix our HVACs, our roofing, our projects, or replacement electrical. We're not asking for money to make ADA compliant bathrooms or entrance ramps for our staff and students. Peter, who doesn't get out much, our BA knows the exact age of every square foot of roof, pavement, turf in the district. Peter and his staff know the life expectancy of every HVAC unit in the district, and he plans accordingly. They plan, they allocate money through our capital reserve every year to ensure our infrastructure and assets are maintained properly so that this board and future boards don't need to go out to residents and ask for tens of millions of dollars. However, what we are asking for is help with additional funds to help us with 2 very specific and immediate needs: security costs and paraprofessional health benefits. Those are the 2 things that we need help with right now. Mike and Dr. LaSousa went into a lot more detail. Again, I was just hoping to clarify some of the points that are out there. And again, if it's November 7th is the election, please don't leave it up to your neighbor to carry the day. Whether you're a yes vote or no vote, you've got to go out and your voices have got to be heard. If you're in favor of security, you have to get out and vote. If you're in favor of full-day kindergarten, you have to get out and vote. If you're in favor of paraprofessionals getting benefits, you have to vote. Or if you're in favor of not reducing our programming because these questions didn't pass, you have to get out and vote. You cannot leave it up to your neighbor to carry the day. Again, yes vote, no vote, you have to go out. Don't let 30% of the people in town decide this question. Please, please go out and vote. So I thank you for your indulgence to the board. I appreciate that. Mr. Bradley, I apologize. Mr. Smith, as the finance chair, would you like to add anything or?
Yeah, I mean, other than, you know, just the initial reaction I had when reading this flyer and being, quite frankly, disgusted at the notion that there would be any people in this town that were inferred to as a liability or a cost center. It upset me quite a lot. But the reality is we've been talking about this for months and months and months. We were very close to having to pull a lot of really bad levers at the last budget meeting, in the last budget year. And we're kind of running out of levers. And you hit the nail on the head, and I just wanted to drive that home, that there are certain things that as a district we have to provide. We have to provide English. We have to provide paraprofessionals. We have to provide a free and appropriate public education for all of our students, every one of them. We don't have to provide the tremendous amount of sports programming and AP classes and STEM classes and robotics and everything that makes our district so unique and so special. We also don't have to provide classroom sizes of 20 kids. And all of those things are what ultimately we have to take a very hard look at if we run up against budgetary constraints again. That's all I got.
Mr. Ryan,
I think Mrs. Weber and Mrs. Smith, you know, hit the nail on the head. There are, like Mrs. Smith said, there are certain things we have to do, and those things are going to be done. So the residents have to decide in these measures if they don't want those things to be done through additional taxes. What are you willing to give up in the other services that we provide in order to keep taxes low for, you know, this period of time? It has to happen. The paraprofessionals will be getting health care at some point. The question is going to be, what do you want to give up to get that done?
thank you, Mr. Ryan. It's hard to see in this format. I
Yeah.
can't see anybody. Does anybody else have any additional comments? Not that you're restricted to this time only. Dr. LaSousa, is there anything that we said that was egregious? Or you'd like to clarify?
No, I think that's it, from my point of view.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate it. We may have to pick this up again at board business. I mean, Bradley, if you're still chair of finance, which I suspect you will be for the next 12 years, because I think it's a 10-year run minimum, you may have to, depending on how this vote goes in November, you may have to ask Dr. LaSousa for a list. Give me the list of priorities, and we start ticking off one at a time. You know, what do you want to save? What can we give up?
Also, just, it goes without mentioning in terms of our ability to cut cost, and specific to the Trenton conversation, the job that Dr. Sorrentino's done in squeezing every penny possible.
Right. Yes, that's true. Thank you, Dr. Sorrentino.
And just to mention that again, the real problem here is IDEA, right? People like to lobby Trenton, but really people should be lobbying Congress. That law needs to be fully funded the way they said it should be funded. There was a measure introduced in the Senate recently to do just that. Unfortunately, it was introduced by Senator Menendez, who may have, other things going on right now, so I don't think he's going to get too many co-sponsors. So Congress is what needs to be lobbied here. If we had IDEA funded at 40%, then we wouldn't be having this conversation, and we probably wouldn't be having the conversation about whether or not to pay for all-day kindergarten or not.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Mr. Ryan made it funny. Dr. LaSousa, did you have anything additional in the superintendent's report?
That is it for me, except that it's likely that our next board meeting will be held at the middle school because of the
Macbeth.
production that's happening here. You can see we're tight on the stage tonight, and it'll be worse by November 6th.
Okay, great. We're going to backdrop into the Macbeth scenery here soon. Okay, great. Peter, over to you for a construction update.
Just to reiterate what Dr. LaSousa just said, yes, the November 6th board meeting will be moved to the middle school auditorium to accommodate further set production so that the show can and must go on the weekend of November 16th. The only tidbit I wanted to add in everybody's comment about the roofs, everybody's going to say, well, you do a roof every year, you do a roof every year. If you can equate the size of a football field, the district's roof square footage is more than 7 football fields. So that is one of the negatives of having schools on one level. You end up with big roofs. Big roofs mean they get replaced. And that is, why we do that. Everybody may say why you do a roof every year. It's because of the amount of magnitude of roof space we have. The other comment that everybody says is the tax levy can go up by 2%. Yes, the funding that comes from the borough and township goes up by 2% every year, but that doesn't guarantee that the state aid will also increase. We've been fortunate over the last few years that the state has increased our aid in minor amounts to fully fund their formula, but that is coming to an end. So you're only getting an increase on a portion of your revenue, not all of your revenue, so please, consider that. On the construction update, it's very quick. The ADA ramp has been completed and is being used for about 2 weeks now, and everything is going very well, and it's a benefit to the entrance of the high school. And the contractor should be getting to work on the Washington Avenue brick as a result of the May accident. We're hopeful by the end of the teacher convention week. Unfortunately, the last 5 Saturdays in a row of rain have hindered the contractor's schedule since that was slated to be a Saturday project. So that will get tackled soon. That's all I have unless there's any questions.
No questions from me. Thank you, Peter. Sorry, now we're going to hear from Riley.
Not much going on. The PSAT was administered to juniors last week at the high school. Athletics-wise, Cougar Weekend had a great turnout from the community and students. Boosters raised some money. Teams are now entering the county and the state tournaments. Performing Arts, CPAC, the Chatham Performing Arts Club, has they do like a talent show kind of thing on October 20th. I believe it's here, but I'm not sure with the stage. Might be at the middle school, I'm not sure. And then there's the fall play, Macbeth, on November 16th, 17th, and 18th. I think we meet again before then, but lots of extracurriculars going on. Since we last met, there was the senior breakfast, so big thank you to the PTO for that. There was homecoming, Cougar Weekend again. Feedback on the new food service at the high school. People love it. All the students love it. And this week's Week of Respect at all schools, so there's multiple events going on for that throughout the district.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you, Riley. Didn't it pour homecoming? Not on Cougar Weekend?
Yeah, and on homecoming.
Oh, man. But you still had fun. Excellent. Very good. Thank you, Riley. Moving over to the committee reports, we're going to start with you, Mrs. Ciccarelli. Personnel?
Yes, personnel met on October 4th, and we just discussed various ongoing personnel matters, staffing updates, and the draft CEA MOA. And we are planning to meet again on November 1st, although we may have to meet sooner, so stay tuned on that.
Okay, fantastic. Any questions for Ann on any of those items? Nope. Sorry, it's very difficult to see. A curriculum, Susan?
The Curriculum Committee also met on October 4th. We met with the Social Studies Supervisor, Steve Mayer, who reviewed the amended curriculum profiles for 3 grades, and these changes were designed to allow more instructional time, predominantly in 10th grade social studies, to cover more thoroughly the last 50 years of U.S. history. And to accommodate this, they were, I'll just quickly go over each grade's changes, but all of this is online in the curriculum profiles for those who are interested. The lessons on colonization and the Revolutionary War will move from 9th grade U.S. history to 8th grade civics. So the timeline for 9th grade will then cover material from the 1800s through World War I. And then 10th grade will start with the 1920s, which is a little later, so that it will allow for a few new units, including the New World of the 1990s and America in the New Millennium, to be thoroughly gone through by the end of that year. And then in other news, we had all back-to-school nights are complete in all buildings in the district. And also, if you haven't gotten them already, the NJSLA test results were mailed to all households, and there will be a presentation on those results and trends at the November BOE meeting. That's it. Thanks.
Oh, great. Thank
Oh,
you.
and sorry, our next meeting is also November 1st.
November 1st, great. Thank you, Susan. Does anybody have any questions on those curricular changes? Mike, that's taking effect this year, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I thought. That was a very comprehensive meeting with Mr. Mayor. Very good. Mr. Smith, back to you for Finance and Facilities.
Yes, Finance and Facilities met on October 11th. We discussed the ballot proposals, which Dr. LaSousa spoke about tonight. He also put out a proactive email to the entire district answering some questions that people had. We also discussed the flyer that you spoke on before, Ms. Weber, in the township. And yeah, we're encouraging residents to vote on November 7th. We then also discussed the CEA, and they've ratified the new contract that has gone into effect. We reviewed the terms and changes of that agreement. Mr. DeQuilla spoke to us about the ROD grant funding. We have been approved by the DOE for projects totaling in cost of $4,373,000, of which 40% would be funded back to us. That's $1.7 million. Just as a reminder, the ROD grants that were chosen this year all had to do with HVAC and roofing. And the way that these ROD grants work, you can't apply for the ROD grants unless you have the money in capital reserve in order to pay for the project. So thankfully, because we've been fiscally conservative and we have that money in capital reserve, we're able to apply for these ROD grants that have been funded, giving the district back the $1.7 million. There's no update on the ROD grant in terms of it being finalized yet, but the preliminary estimated cost letters will go out in October, and after approved, a final cost letter will get issued. We can schedule the project balance out of capital reserve and get the money back out of grants. And then finally, security at every level of the board we've talked about nonstop. We hear all of the residents' in the last few meetings and the lack of security. We spoke about the district hiring 2 redshirt security guards that will be able to be placed immediately in the borough schools, and also got an update on both the borough and township, which are very close to hiring additional class 2 and 3 officers. So we're meeting next, I think, Mr. DeQuilla,
November 15th.
November 15th.
Thank you, Bradley. Any questions for Bradley on any of those topics? I did notice that some folks called into the Borough Council meeting asking Chief Gibbons about security in the borough, and he had a fairly comprehensive response to those folks, and he explained the challenges, not just with the inventory of personnel, but then also the background checks, and it just takes a while to onboard folks. So that was nice that they phoned in to get the answer, and Chief Gibbons, spoke about it for quite a while.
Right, and just to reiterate what we said last month, these officers are hired by the borough chief and the township chief, and then we pay it for them. They're fully funded, they're in the budget. We have the budget to staff people as soon as possible, and we hear you, residents who have all come out and spoke about this.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bradley. Mr. Ryan, over to you for policy and planning.
Yeah. Policy met on October 11th. The committee continues to review the NJSBA policy series by series. We should be, I'm hoping we can finish that up by maybe the reorg meeting in February. We spoke about high school graduation recognitions. We had some requests for Eagle Scouts and Gold Scout Award recipients to be recognized at the high school graduation ceremony. And the committee decided to recognize those groups at the award ceremony versus the actual graduation ceremony. We had some requests for some athletic coaches that are having trouble or having concerns about underclassmen not being able to participate in varsity sports. Talented underclassmen don't get to play some of these sports because some of the positions are taken up by, some of the positions on the team are taken up by seniors who may not get that much playing time. So the coaches wanted to have some discretion on those matters, and the committee decided to give them that discretion.
Okay, great.
That's it.
Thanks, Mike. I don't know, Mike LaSousa, on the recognition awards for students that do work, there's so many students, not just scouts, that do volunteer work at the schools, whether they're, Key Club or they're doing it for their church or for a scouting event. At one point, we used to give out like achievement awards at the board meeting, which I think might even be more appropriate, that close to the time they finish their project, maybe they can come to a board meeting and be recognized with that certificate of achievement. Because the kids do so many great things, and there's, hundreds of kids that volunteer thousands of hours. It would be impossible to recognize each of them at graduation. And they don't do it for the bow. They don't do it for the curtain call. They're doing it to give back. They're doing it for a sense of, community. They're really not doing it for the curtain call, but it would be nice to recognize, the folks that are specifically giving, building or giving back to the school community, whether it's the, Unity or all of those events. Maybe we can revive that practice of recognizing them at a board meeting with a certificate of achievement signed by you.
We can definitely do that.
Okay, fantastic. Mr. Ryan, did you have any objections to that?
No, that's totally appropriate. There needs to be some way to recognize some of the volunteerism that happens that does benefit the school district.
Right. Okay, great. Oh, fantastic. And Mr. Ryan, you said hoping to get through the policies by the reorg meeting, which confuses me each and every year for the last 12 years. Is that January or is that May?
No, that's the February reorg meeting. January?
See, I'm not the only one confused. Okay. All right, fantastic. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ryan? Nope. You're good. I hate this layout. Okay, fantastic, thank you. That's the end of the committee reports. Just quickly, liaisons, any liaison reports? Susan?
Okay, CF funded $10,000 in grants in September, and the next cycle of grant applications will be due October 20th. And they have almost sold out their annual fundraiser. This is the 10th year of the annual trivia night. There are 5 tables left, so if anyone is interested, you're encouraged to visit CEF's website to register. Thanks.
Oh, great, thank you. I appreciate it. Any additional liaison reports? Nope. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to make a motion to approve the September 18th minutes, public session and executive session. Everybody was present at that meeting. So I'd like to make a motion to move those minutes. Second. And seconded it. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? There you go, Peter.
Duly noted, pass 8-0.
Okay, fantastic, great. So we're at our first opportunity for public commentary. Hearing of the citizens during the public commentary section of the agenda is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are or are not topics scheduled for the current meeting. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers will be asked to limit their comments to a reasonable length of time. I believe, Chris, are you able to help me with some of the timing? Oh, yeah. Okay, so try and keep it to 3 to 4 minutes so that we can, so that everybody can be heard. And again, just as a reminder, this is your opportunity to make any public commentary, compliments, comments that you want. We're not going to interrupt you. We'll take notes and we'll try and address items as best we can at the end. So the floor is yours. If you could introduce yourself, that would be swell.
Before everyone starts, I'd like to remind each person who wants to make a public comment, they must sign the list that's on the podium. Thank you.
Libby Hills and Rath, Chatham Borough. I'm sure many people, including myself, were shocked to hear at the last meeting that education is not the first priority of our schools. Security and mental health were listed as numbers 1 and 2 above education. First of all, security should be a given. There should be no question, no matter what the cost, that all aspects involving the security of the students and staff are part of the base budget, not something that's up for a vote. I find it absolutely shameful that there was absolutely no way out of an $86 million budget that security costs couldn't be funded without a second question. And what's even worse, by putting it up for a vote, you risk it failing. And then what happens to the security measures? Will they not be put into place, thereby risking the security and students and staff? As for mental health being the second priority, you're not a hospital, you're a school district. Education should be your number 1 priority. It's my understanding that based on what's posted on the website, that many mental health professionals and programs were added when COVID started. COVID is over. Has anyone on the board or administration taken a hard look as to whether all of these employees and programs are still necessary? Maybe some of these positions are no longer necessary and can be eliminated. And as for the, quote, crowding out effect that you spoke about at the last meeting, what you're telling us is that you can't find the money in an $86 million budget to fund security measures. We expect you to be fiscally prudent with taxpayer money and entrust that you will put education first. Security should be a given, and we are not a mental health hospital. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jamil Guerrero. My husband and I have been parents in this school district since 2008. Both of my children have benefited from paraprofessionals in their classrooms. Paraprofessionals play an essential role within our school districts. They provide support to both our students and our teachers. Every child in our school district has benefited from our support of our paraprofessionals. Even if a child is not neurodiverse, disabled, or needs extra support in any way. Why does every child benefit? Because they support not just our students who need extra help, They support our teachers and our classrooms. They provide the specific support some students need to be able to participate fully in their education, while allowing teachers to fully engage in the education of the broader classroom. My son Matthew has had paraprofessionals since he started in the school district. His participation in both his self-contained classroom and in the general education setting has been aided by them. As one example, he is a terrific musician. His best instrument is the drums. He plays well and can read and transcribe music. But integrating him into a large band would have been close to impossible if our band director had to take time away from his class to work with Matthew. Because of the paraprofessionals he has had in his class, Matthew is thriving and able to fully participate as a member of the band. It's a sight to see at the high school concerts. Benefits are essential to attracting and retaining these essential paraprofessionals. Benefits would allow the district to hire them full-time. This would allow for less disruption for our students who typically have one para in the morning and a different one in the afternoon. This would create more consistency for both teachers and students. Without capable paras, we risk the attrition of qualified teachers who we cannot afford to lose in this current environment. As a taxpayer, I believe this is just the type of cost we should be supporting, one that benefits every student and teacher in the school district.
Hi, my name is Michelle Ryan. I am married to a Mike Ryan, but a different Mike Ryan. Hi, Mike. Please forgive me, I'm very nervous, but I'm here to make sure that everyone votes yes to proposal number 2, to offering paraprofessional health benefits as part of their employment contract. I really love the school districts of the Chathams, and I can prove that to you because I'm a graduate of Chatham High School. I graduated on that stage in 1990. And I went to Southern Boulevard K through 5, Lafayette 6 through 8, and the high school 9 through 12. And when Mike and I had our first child, we were living in the city and we said, both of us, we want to go to Chatham because we want to raise our kids in Chatham because of the school district. But we got a diagnosis for both kids. They both have a rare genetic disorder that makes learning for them really, really, really hard. It was such a relief to me when I found out that I could keep them in district and they could be here and learn in the school district of the Chathams. They both started at 3 years old, and they've had a our son is 11 and our daughter is 9, and they've had a para support since they were 3 in the preschool program. So I am very grateful for the service, and I think all the special ed parents are as well. If you're not a special ed parent, the way it works is that the way it's working for my family is that the kids are with a special ed teacher, and those paraprofessionals are educators helping the special ed teacher teach our children. They are educators. They're there for educational support. And my children wouldn't be reading or counting or doing anything without them. They are important core people who go above and beyond. They're worth the investment. Please vote yes.
Good evening. My name is Carol Etheridge, and I am here tonight in support of both questions that are on the ballot. I've lived in Chatham for nearly 30 years, and my 3 children all had exceptional experiences in each school over the years. My husband and I always felt fortunate to live in Chatham and to be able to take advantage of all that this district had to offer. Our children are adults now, and we remain grateful to this district. As a Chatham resident and a former PTO president, I'm here tonight because I feel strongly that our current students and those in the future can have the same experience that my children had. Chatham voters must vote yes to question 1. I work in a school office, and our building does not have a security officer, but we do have a vestibule. Anyone in my building would validate the necessity of a vestibule as a security measure. It is not the only answer to creating safe schools, but it is the most basic. There needs to be a place for all visitors to stop before fully entering the building. In our building, everything is left in the vestibule: the lunches, the sports equipment, instruments, and homework. It allows us to function so that no one enters without an appointment. The vestibule serves as a means to drastically reduce the traffic coming into our school building. Voters need to vote yes to allow vestibules to be built in each of our 5 buildings here in Chatham, and then have the designated funds in subsequent years to support security officers and any other measures necessary to keep our students and faculty safe. Similarly, all residents of Chatham's must support question 2. Paraprofessionals are essential within our district. We need to vote yes to offer them health benefits because we need to do anything we can to hire and maintain them. Anyone who believes paraprofessionals only support special ed students is ill-informed and quite literally wrong. I was a paraprofessional at Washington Avenue for 2 years. While I may have been assigned to one student to attend his and her needs, the reality is I attended to many, many more. Paraprofessionals oversee the morning lineup, the lunch room, the recess. At these unstructured times, they monitor the interaction of the students. They make sure they are playing safely. They make sure they're eating their lunch. They walk students to the nurse. They see if anyone is withdrawn or quiet. The list goes on. Many would agree they are the eyes and ears of the school. In classrooms, paras help maintain an appropriate environment so teachers can work uninterrupted with students, one-on-one, and in small groups. Presently, I work in a school, and I can honestly say on days when we have a high number of paras absent, it is incredibly challenging to run the building. Knowing how essential they are, voters will be doing a tremendous disservice to all of our students if they vote the question down. If we continually lose paras to districts that offer benefits, then we need to do something to change that, and that means voting yes to question 2. These 2 questions represent 2 clear ways we can keep our district operating at the same exceptional level it has for many, many years. Chatham voters need to support and vote yes to both of these questions. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Betsy Long. I am a biology teacher at Chatham High School, and I am the co-president of the Chatham Education Association with my friend Laura Noonan. Tonight, we are glad to say that we have come to an agreement with the board on a contract. We thank Dr. LaSousa, Beth Grant, and all of the members of the CEA negotiations team for their hard work and dedication towards coming to a strong agreement, one of the strongest in Morris County. Thank you to our staff who have been patient since they've been frozen since the beginning of the year, and we thank them for their patience with the entire process. We are also here tonight to show CEA's support for the 2 measures on the November ballot. The first measure funds school safety and security measures and allows the district to keep these systems updated. It funds the keypads, the personnel, the physical structures that provide us with the extra minutes to react to dangerous situations. It allows the school workers who practice with your children in our classrooms the protocols in each of these situations an added level of protection. It allows the district to continue to staff SROs in our schools at competitive rates. It allows our technology department the funds to stay in front of cybersecurity of all of our accounts, students, families, and staff, and their information. There have been about 60 school shootings this year in the United States in 2023 alone. Cybersecurity attacks have increased by 80% this year from 2022, according to Education Week. Please vote in favor of the school safety funding ballot measure to keep students and our staff safe and up to date.
And my name is Laura Noonan. I'm a third grade teacher at Southern Boulevard School and also the co-president of CEA with my friend Betsy Long. The second measure on the ballot is to be used to directly impact classrooms with the expansion of the full-time paraprofessional program by offering single-user benefits and allowing for more of these positions to exist within the district. Paraprofessionals help us as a district to comply with state and federal law, keep students in the least restrictive areas possible, and help support teachers to do a better job with our students. Paraprofessionals are the unsung heroes of our buildings. They support our children in all circumstances through both learning activities, including daily hygiene and medical needs. Paras support one-on-one and whole classrooms from grades pre-K to 8 to core classes in the high school like chemistry and environmental science, even to the 18 to 21-year-old program. Paras help keep students in the district by providing them individualized support. The paras who work here are high caliber, who go above and beyond, who are rock stars in their own right. In addition, the number of paras who are Chatham community members is high. This means the money we spend on these people is money spent in the community. It will stay here and circulate here. Money spent on paras is money spent in Chatham. So speaking from firsthand experience as a third grade teacher, I have 1 or 2 paras in my class daily for math, science, and social studies. I would never be able to do my small group instruction, any strategy groups, or the projects we do in third grade social studies or science without the help of these dedicated professionals who are willing to jump in and do whatever it takes, whatever I ask of them for the students to be successful. They have been more than extremely helpful to me on a daily basis, and the students love their help as well. So please vote yes to question number 2. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bridget McMenamin, Chatham Borough. And listening to these comments, they're very moving, but there seems to be some confusion about what issue is presented on the ballot this fall. The issue is not whether paraprofessionals are necessary or whether school security is important. The issue is, how are we going to pay for these things? Are we going to recognize that they're essential and put them in the regular budget for them like other essentials? Or are we going to vote on them, thereby subordinating them to some things that might be less essential? Perhaps there could be a pot of finger paint or a stick of furniture that's a little bit less essential than education and security. And I really regret having to say this, but if no one else will, I will. It is unseemly for a powerful public official to make personal attacks on anyone, much less a constituent. Doing it from the dais on television is bullying, pure and simple. Surely that is not the example you want to set. An apology to Mrs. Hilsenrath is in order. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Reale, and I'm a leader of Chatham CPEG. This is a group of parents who work with school district to support our special education students in Chatham and all students receiving support services. Tonight, I want to give our support for ballot initiative number 2. We've watched over the last few years how the needs and demands of the Student Support Service Department have evolved and changed. One thing that has not changed is the essential need of having well-trained, caring paraprofessional support in our classrooms. Parents of children with all different types of needs will often tell you that without paraprofessional support, their child would have been left behind, whether that's in the race to get coats on for recess at the youngest grade levels, buried in a sea of crumpled up pieces of paper in middle school, or being able to access a rigorous curriculum in the high school. Simply put, paraprofessionals don't let that happen. Their support takes care of an essential need: keep kids alongside their peers in their neighborhood schools. When your child has challenges with being a student, academic, behavioral, or physical, you worry, maybe more than usual, about them fitting in. I often hear from families that it was the paraprofessional in the classroom who connected so strongly and deeply with their student, even on occasion, stopping in at a birthday party or coming to watch a TED Talk outside of school hours. When parents tell me about their positive experience with paraprofessionals, it's usually along the lines of, "She always made me feel reassured, like someone had eyes on my child when I wasn't there." Personally speaking, my daughter without special education services benefited at least as much as my one who did. She changed from a local private school to Washington Avenue School in first grade through third grade. Right away, I saw the benefit from her being in a more diverse classroom setting. She learned tolerance, collaboration, and excellent modeling from not just one, but two teachers. Indeed, one of the closest connections she had during her elementary years was to an assistant teacher offering support in her third grade classroom. I still have the long personal thank you note to her from this teacher in her memory box. In my work with CPEG over the last few years, I can also tell you that when families are forced to send their student outside of the school district to assure that meaningful learning, progress, or support can happen, they are crestfallen. Some circumstances make this unavoidable.
Excuse me.
However,
Excuse me, can we wrap it up, please?
yes.
Thanks.
It would be that much sadder if kids were forced to leave because of the lack of in-class support from paraprofessionals. Because ballot initiative 2 involves costs and budgetary spending, I want to make sure I'm not just speaking on behalf of this proposal for the feel-good, community-based reasons to support it. If children who need support services are not able to receive those services through the school district, they have to travel to private schools outside of our district to receive their education. This is extremely high cost to our school district that involves tuition, transportation, far exceeding the cost of having a trained professional meet those needs in-house. Last sentence, Mr. DeSandro.
Thanks.
It's a long one. At the ballot box, I hope our town will support number 2 to keep our community thriving. My work on CPEG has been largely focused on improving literacy and numeracy outcomes. I don't see this work happening without reliable paraprofessionals in our classroom. And our ability to keep kids with their friends at school, to reduce the stigma often associated with learning differences, and to expose our children to the high academic standards in Chatham depends on this. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tony Elkis, and little levity. I'm here tonight supporting my wife. She's been away for a few days until she told me I have to go to this meeting. I didn't know why, but after sitting here the last hour and a half, I know why. And our son has some special needs, and when you get that diagnosis, it's challenging. And we've been through a lot, good and bad, and I can tell you firsthand how important the paras are. We've taken a little different path, and I want to echo a lot of the comments that the parents have made, because they've been through this journey also. But to have that para, just sometimes just to give that confidence to your kid, it makes a huge difference. And to have somebody who you can keep in district because they're getting health care, it makes a huge difference. And as said before by Amy right before me, I don't know Amy, but Amy hit the nail on the head, and Dr. Lucer said that it costs a heck of a lot more to have somebody go out to another school than to pay a para to stay in district. And we had to start out that way, but I'm proud to say our son has overachieved, and he's done things that we couldn't imagine. And part of that is because of the teachers, and the teachers in this district are outstanding. The administrators have always stood behind us. I can't thank them enough. We're back in Chatham. We have a great program. We have great teachers. We have great paras, and we need to maintain that. And as a businessman, what was said by Amy, Dr. DeLusa, it makes a heck of a lot of sense. And, you know, I go with my kid to tennis events, and everybody said, where are you from, Chatham? And they said, outstanding school district. They do the right thing. And I think this is an easy one to do the right thing. Thank you.
Good evening, Vicki Aloy at Chatham Township. I was hoping, could you clarify in tonight's agenda, it's item 7, page 10, that you're submitting a grant application under the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 for an additional $802,418. Is that, I don't know how, does that mean it's a done deal? You have to amend the application? I'm not sure what the wording means, but it sounds like we could possibly get those funds, these COVID dollars. So if you could clarify that, that would be terrific. Also regarding the security vestibules and some of the contradictory comments I heard tonight from Mr. Smith, you did say you have money in the budget to hire the security professionals. That's great news. So if there's money in the budget, perhaps we can fund them that way in the budget and not through this tax proposal. The other contradictory comments I heard tonight was that if these votes do not pass, we'll have to cut other programs like sports, AP, STEM. But these are two tax levies that are going to fund specific items. Why you would say you're going to cut other things if these votes do not pass, I found that just a little surprising and contradictory. And lastly, Jill Weber, your comments toward Mrs. Hilsenrath, I thought were really crossed a line, were very unprofessional. I was really taken aback, and it's really a poor reflection of the board. Thank you.
Bob Penn, Chatham Borough. The board is well aware of my background, but just for the people in the audience, just let me give you a brief bit of my history so you'll know my opinions are not just opinions. I have 45 years of experience in emergency services, 26 years active service. I've been an instructor up at the Police and Fire Academy for 28 years. I'm certified as a school safety specialist. I was trained by the New Jersey State Police. I taught for 17 years after I retired from the fire service. 10 of those years, I was an advisor to the school security team and worked closely with law enforcement at the state, county, and local level. I've done coursework at the postmaster's and doctoral level in Homeland Security and emergency management. And I've conducted 10 years of research in school security and active shooters using resources such as the FBI, U.S. Marshal Service, Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security. The board could verify that my resources are legitimate resources. with school security, a lot of time, we're moving at such a pace now that a lot of times appropriations you made in the budget 5 years ago are not going to keep up with what it takes now with the most technical advances to provide the maximum security. The security vestibules are an absolute must. Okay. At the last meeting, there were a couple of people who said, well, why don't you hire security officers instead of the vestibules? The vestibules are extremely important, our first line of defense. A lot of times when you're buzzing somebody in, you don't have a direct line of sight to them. The security vestibule gives you that. It keeps people contained in an area where you can judge their demeanor, possibly recognize a hidden weapon. It prevents somebody from coming in right behind, if somebody's buzzed in. I mean, how many times, if you were buzzed in and somebody says, hey, wait, hold the door. Are you going to hold the door and let somebody come right in? You don't know who that person is. Okay, so the security vestibules are absolute, they're an absolute necessity. There's no question about that. Also, by having them, if you don't have police officers in every school, whether there's class 3 officers or SROs, you can keep that person out of that area until they can respond, even if they're not on site. If you don't have those security vestibules, once they're inside, it's game on. And the bullet-resistant glass that would be used in those areas provides another layer of protection. Often school offices are one of the most vulnerable areas, and somebody who's up to no good comes in and tries to neutralize the office because that's where calls are going to go out to the rest of the school and the police. Okay, but in terms of security, we talk so much about active shooters. You have now situations where you have domestic violence, custody battles, restraining orders, where parents, you may look, oh yeah, I know that parent. Well, you may not know that there's a restraining order against that person. Okay, so funding school security, it's a daunting task. And I don't know this board to be people that play fast and loose with taxpayer money. I've never seen that. And like I said, school security is expensive, but not having school security is a lot more expensive and a lot more dangerous than you think.
Thanks, Bob.
So there's an old saying, when you cut to the bone, make sure you don't amputate the limb. And I've seen that happen. So if as a taxpayer, I'm 70 years old, I'm on a fixed income, I'm retired, but if you're telling me you need the money to keep our kids safe, as far as I'm concerned, you got it.
Thanks, Bob.
Good evening. I'm Patrick Ryan, a Chatham Borough resident and a senior at CHS. At the last meeting, Mrs. Clark mentioned that many may not understand the essential role of a paraprofessional. I'd like to share my experiences with these unsung heroes who play a vital role in the lives and education of students. I hope you will listen and understand when I tell you how important paras are to student achievement and well-being, because I have lived it every day. Like many other students, I have needed the support of paras to help me emotionally, behaviorally, socially, and academically. As some of you may know, I recently delivered a TED Talk. When I looked into the crowd, I noticed 4 of the paras who have supported me at different points throughout my career in Chatham. In retrospect, I realized that I never would have been on that stage without the support of these incredibly dedicated people. Sitting in the audience was my para from 2nd grade with her husband and 5 adult children. My 2nd grade year was particularly rough, and she was the one person who was there for me on good days and bad. I never would have made it through the year without Mrs. Mortensen. In fact, it is very likely that second grade would have been my last year in the district had it not been for her. My middle school para, Mrs. Malatesta, was also in the crowd. Not only did she support me academically, she saved me from bullying. She was my lifeline during the pandemic, both academically and emotionally. She got on every virtual class call to support me. She continues to influence my life today. Mrs. Dunn was also there. I'll never forget how she inspired me to help incoming special ed students adjust to the high school by encouraging them to eat lunch together, join clubs, and go to school-sponsored events. This was a personal shift for me. I went from being someone who had always needed others to understanding for the first time what it actually felt like to be needed by others. And then there was Mr. G, my then and current para, and his wife. Imagine the dedication it takes for someone to not only be at my side for all 180 days of school, but also to accompany me so I could attend school-sponsored events like homecoming, business day at MetLife Stadium, teen nights, stage crew, a 15-hour trip to New York City to go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Carnegie Hall, and even the junior prom. These are experiences that other students have always had that were only available to me because of Mr. G's support. He is the same great guy I still find online checking my work late at night. What I am trying to say is students with disabilities have the same hopes and dreams as everyone else, but some of us just need a little more help to get there. It would not have been possible for me to accomplish what I have without my paras. In fact, without them, there is no way I would be getting inducted into the National Honor Society in a couple of weeks. Tonight, I am asking the Chatham community to please ensure that special ed students who come after me will have the support they need to reach their potential. I hope you can see that a vote in favor of question 2 is not just a vote for the well-deserved benefits for paras, it is a vote for inclusion in education, a vote to maximize opportunities for all students, a vote to support the more than 800 students with disabilities in the district who have been enabled to access the same educational experiences as their non-disabled peers, in great part because of their amazing paraprofessionals. Please vote yes on question 2. Thank you, and most of all, thank you to all of our dedicated paras.
Hi, I'm here, I support both ballot measures, but I'm here to speak specifically on number 2. I'm a little nervous, it's my first school board meeting. Susan Pavati from the borough. My son, he's a freshman here at Chatham High School. He has been in the district since he was 3 years old, and we have had the benefit of many great paras, most of those one-on-one aides. And our current para he has had since he started at Lafayette. We sincerely hope that she will finish out his time in the district. She has been amazing. We consider her a family member. It is impossible to overstate how important she has been, and all the paras, but particularly Marianne Costa, has been to our son's education and his entire well-being. He would not be in public school if it were not for the paraprofessionals. They are not merely teachers' aides. They provide educational support, classroom support, classwork, homework. They are close coordinators with the classroom teachers and the child study team. We view them as integral parts of that whole team. Our para provides self-care. It's grueling physical work. I know it because we do it at home, and she is tireless. I can't imagine that she doesn't have health care. It's worrisome to me personally. She helps with his socialization because of her and other paras. He was able to attend out-school functions, the middle school dance, for example. A few years ago, she noticed some strange medical events happening. She took it upon herself. Nobody asked her to. She started logging it, keeping track of it. It led to an epilepsy diagnosis that we would not have had without her close, careful attention. This is care that's life-affirming, it's life-saving for some of these families and for mine. You know, sorry, I didn't think I'd get emotional, but you've heard from a lot of special education families tonight. I'm sure you hear from them often. We want the same things as all the parents in this district do. We have a lot of uncertainty. We don't really know what the future holds after high school, after they're out of the district. We don't know what higher education options we have, employment. These are issues that are anxiety-inducing for us. But while they're here, while they're in the district, we want to be sure that they're getting the absolute best that they can, that they're experiencing the best and brightest from their regular teachers as well as their paraprofessionals. We want to make sure that they have access to the same educational services and programs that all other students do, that are their rights under federal law. And so we want to know that they're going to be okay here. We want to know that the district is able to attract the paraprofessionals that are going to give that assurance, that are going to be here year after year and not be leaving for other districts. I have another son, also a freshman. He is not special education. He's in typical classes. He has been able to avail himself of the many great programs, sports, arts, various other things throughout our time here in Chatham. I value those as well. I would hate to see anything be cut. I view those as equally vital. So I could not imagine trying to second guess the Board of Education, the professional educators here in the district as to which things are more important, which things need to be cut. I think it's all important, and I am grateful that this district has put this ballot initiative out there, and I strongly urge folks to vote yes. Thank you.
Good evening to all. Bill Heap, Chatham Borough. Would like to start by saying I saw Mr. Ryan's TED presentation and just listened to his presentation to you, and I want to say that his public speaking skills are outstanding. They really are. My hat is off to you. I've got a lot to say, so I'll start with this. I came in late. If I missed anything with regard to full-day kindergarten, please correct me. I've been coming to these meetings for the last 8 or 10 years, and during that time, I've tried to figure out the politics surrounding kindergarten in New Jersey. And I'm baffled. Kindergarten is not mandated. Keep in mind the folks in Trenton have never met an idea that they didn't want to mandate, and they are especially good at mandating things that they have no intention of paying for. Back in olden days, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, people didn't question the status quo. It was what it was, and people generally went along. Starting in the 90s, maybe with the Abbott decision, there has been a robust education activism throughout the state. It's fair to say that it is now an industry, and nothing escapes their attention. We've also had liberal governors who could have addressed the issue. Mr. McGreevey, Mr. Cody, Mr. Corzine, just to name a few, and they chose not to. Mr. Christie, well, no. He didn't have 2 words to say to the teachers union for 8 years. Mr. Murphy is just the opposite. He's in the sack with the union, everybody knows it, and he owes them big. We're also living under one-party rule. They have complete power and can do anything they want without spending a whole lot of political capital. Evidently, nobody in Trenton thinks that full-day kindergarten is a priority, much to the disappointment of numerous members of this audience. And that presents us with an opportunity. We are on solid ground when we charge for a valuable service. We are fortunate enough to live in a community with a clientele that is both willing to pay. Don't forget that the lottery was oversubscribed, but they're also able to pay. They may not like it. That would be asking a little too much, but they can afford it, and those who can't will be subsidized. So here's the takeaway. You spent much of the last meeting crying poverty. You're facing what just about every other institution in the United States is facing these days. Higher interest rates, inflation, security and staffing issues, and gyrating healthcare and energy costs. No one should ever say that this is easy. I know what you're up against because I ran a business for 47 years and I feel your pain. But choices do have to be made. You're coming to the people for money. It's not in the format that I prefer, but that has been debated already. The people will decide, and I'm okay with that. I just hope they realize they're voting for a permanent increase. However, at the end of the last meeting, Ms. Weber finally let the cat out of the bag. I'm paraphrasing here, but she said the district is gearing up for, moving toward, headed in the direction of free full-day kindergarten. It sounded like Ms. Clark wanted to pull the trigger immediately, and Ms. Weber was a little bit more reserved. Either way, I multiply 200 students by $7,000 and get $1.4 million. And I think I'm conservative with that number, but if you have a different estimate, please do tell.
Are we close, Bill? Oh, Bill, are we close?
Yes, yes.
Please.
I am. I'm finish up, Chris.
10 o'clock.
So whatever it is, it's not pocket change. So riddle me this. If you are claiming dire straits, that you're out of levers and that you're coming to the people for money, and yet in the very next breath you seem to be, you indicate that you're willing to forego to leave substantial recurring tuition revenue on the table that we are entitled to charge. So I don't know how you cry poverty and throw away money at the same time. That's the big question for tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On a lighter note, to end this evening, I'm here. My name is Tracy Press, Township President and also the coach of the Chatham High School sailing team. And I'm here basically to say a big public thank you to the administration and to the board for your unwavering support of our program. By way of background, the team was started here in 2014. I inherited the team from the founding coach, Dan Marino, a couple years ago, doing it full time. In 2022, in fall of 2022, through the generous help of our parents, we were able to purchase 6 slightly used boats from Princeton University to replace some 30-year-old boats that we had bought when we first started the program. So we have these lovely new boats, training these kids, and our sailors work hard. They put in the time, and our kids work really, really hard. But we're sailing around the Raritan Bay with Princeton University sails. It's lovely, but we're not in Princeton University. So we thought, well, maybe it's time to get Chatham sails, but I didn't want to go back to the parents once more. So I talked to some people, and they go, well, why don't you talk to the administration? So I went to Darren D'Alconzo, who has been absolutely unwavering in support of the team, and he goes, let me work on it. And sure enough, within a week, he says, okay, you've got your money, so we're going to have 6 brand, I'd have brought them with me, but they're kind of big to show you, but they are absolutely gorgeous. So the team has 6 brand new sails to go with our 6 almost brand new boats. And then again, he surprised me 2 weeks ago when we needed new uniforms, which were basically our sailing pennies, and ours were really old from the beginning of the team. And I came up with, I had a proposal for it. He goes, give me the proposal and I'll take care of it. And sure enough, now we have brand new pennies to sail in. So I think it's just fantastic. And like I said, our kids work really hard. We have 16 kids sailing this fall. The team is getting better and better. I've got some brand new freshman sailors on the team that are absolutely outstanding. And in the last 2 years, we've had 2 of our sailors recruited to sail at the varsity college level. So the program really is trending in the correct direction. So like I said, this is really, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for supporting our team, and we'll sail more faster. Thank you.
Great, thank you, everybody. We're going to close this public commentary session and try and address some of the comments. Of course, there's a common theme in some of them, and I will address them one at a time. But I think we all agree, Mrs. McMahon was correct, we all agree that the paras are essential. They do a great job. We have phenomenal paras here. The key is how to pay for it, and how do we keep and retain our wonderful paras. So we'll get to that in a minute, but that is the essential question. How do we pay for it? yes, we can pay for it out of the budget. We're paying for paras now. We need an extra $900,000 to offer benefits, and that $900,000 has to come from somewhere. Now, to just say take it out of the base budget, well, that has to come from something. It kind of addresses Vicky's question a little bit. We can absolutely pay for it. We just have to decide where that $900,000 is coming from. It's the part of the crowding out effect. What are we going to crowd out to pay for them? I don't want anybody to think that, I think anybody in this town thinks that paras are not essential, except for the author of that flyer who thought they were not essential. But certainly everybody in this room, I believe, thinks that paras are essential. They do a great job. I mean, young Mr. Ryan's testimony was certainly very moving. Keeping kids in district is critical, and the paras are essential to that. If we have to send any kid out of district, it's a 10-time factor in the cost. And quite frankly, we think they're better off here. They're better off in town. They're better off with our teachers, our educators, our paras. So I did want to just mention that nobody thinks they're not essential or wonderful. It's just, how do we pay for it? So if I could just go back to the top, Mrs. Hilsenrath was the first, to speak, and she questioned that education was third in the priority. And I do want to not double down, but it's a true statement. If our teachers and our students don't feel safe, they can't educate and they can't learn, they can't instruct. If our students, then they can't be educated. And if our students have anxiety, and they're not here, right? They're just not here, Libby. They're not in the schools because they're school avergent. They can't learn. So we have to we have to make sure everybody feels safe. We have to make sure that everybody is well taken care of mentally so that they're engaged when they're here. They're not suicidal. They're not anxiety-ridden. So, first you have to take care of basic needs, safety, mental health, and then when those two things are taken care of, that's when the kids excel. That's when the teachers excel. That's when they can be educated. That's why it's third in the priority. Okay, so I did address that. And again, back to your question of it, why aren't you paying in base budget? Absolutely. We have $80 million. $900,000 has to come out for the paras, or $850 for security. We have this many funds, we have this many priorities. Where's the give and take? Mr. Heat mentioned it's not an easy job. Choices have to be made. This is one of the choices. And that's a choice for the voters in this instance. A number of folks mentioned that they support the paras. Thank you for coming out. I know it's a late night. Janine, you mentioned that all students benefit. Again, as Mrs. Hilsenrath said, you're floating around. Some of the students don't even know why the para's there. They're not really sure which student they're supporting, but they're helping everybody. So every student, every teacher, every administrator in every building benefits from paras being in our district. And it's not just that one-on-one. It's across the board for every student. Mrs. Ryan, not this Mrs. Ryan, but the other Mrs. Ryan, new Mrs. Ryan, who was a graduate of Chatham High School when these seats were probably orange. Again, thank you for highlighting that. Had your students been sent out of district, they would not have had the experience, and it would have cost residents 10 times as much. And hopefully they're doing better here than they would elsewhere. Mrs. Etheridge, thank you for sharing your experiences at a school, both as a paraprofessional as yourself in your district, and the importance of security vestibules. We can fund these out of the base budget. Mr. Smith said it a number of times, and he said it maybe just a half hour or so ago, that we have already budgeted for the personnel. The goal now is it's in our base budget. We're paying for it. We've been paying for it for years. The goal is to build the vestibules and then use that money and reappropriate it, use that money to pay for the security that we budget in our base budget. So it will continue on, whether the vestibules fail or win. We're going to continue to pay for security because, again, number one priority. It's just a matter of what's the give and take on that. We're hoping to use the security money in out years or subsequent years and take the $500,000 or $800,000 for cameras, for technology, for personnel, and reapply it to other programs, whether it's full-day kindergarten or AP classes or extracurricular. That's just as important. Again, those are the choices that we have to make. The two professionals, the two co-presidents rather, Betsy and Laura. You mentioned the CEA agreement. Thank you for your hard work. It was long and arduous hours for them. They were very patient. They came up, as I said, a very strong agreement. They underplayed how much work they put into this. I know they way underplayed that. It is, talk about a thankless job being the co-presidents of a teachers union. You can't please everybody. That's just simply not going to happen. And, you know, they're a bit of they take the brunt of a lot of it, and they manage and they articulate, you know, the agreement down to their union, and the union ratified it overwhelmingly, so we appreciate their help. And hopefully we can continue this partnership. But again, I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't thank you 10 times over for all of the work that you've put in over these weeks and months, and all of it on your own time. And again, it's a thankless job, but thank you. Mrs. McManahan, sorry, at the top of the hour. Again, you brought up the good point. How do we pay for it? That is the essential question. I covered it at the beginning because I thought it was probably the most essential question here. How do we pay for things? Give and take choices. This is going to be a choice for the residents. It is my role. You mentioned my comments at the beginning. It's my role to keep the residents informed. The residents have paid for this lawsuit since 2018. I will absolutely not apologize. In fact, I think Mrs. Hilsenrath owes us an apology for going on Fox National Television and lied about what was going on here in Chatham and put our students in harm's way, put our teachers in harm's way. We got hundreds of threats. We got bomb threats. One was so credible, my goodness, one was so credible that Homeland Security, federal authorities got involved. So, no, the apology is not forthcoming, but feel free to apologize to the residents who've had to pay for this lawsuit year over year over year. Meanwhile, the attorneys handling the other side are 1,400 miles away and just using it as a publicity stunt. So apology is not coming. And again, maybe you forgot that you went on Fox News and said some patently false statements about Chatham that put our children in harm's way. That was atrocious. So don't wait for an apology from me anyway. Amy, thank you again. It's been a while since we've seen you. Thank you for coming out for your support. Again, every grade level, there's paras. It benefits every student. And again, you pointed out, if the paras are forced to leave, it could potentially mean our students are also going to be going out of district, because the para that they connected with, the para that's been with them for years, they're not clicking anymore, and they maybe suffered a little bit, and the students have to go out of district, and it's a factor exponentially higher than the fee if they're stayed in district. Tony, again, you echoed the same thoughts. Thank you for sharing your family story. Again, nobody thinks paras aren't essential. It's just, how do we pay for it? Vicki, I'm going to ask Peter to address your item on item 7 on page 10. But the security vestibules, again, you wanted to know how do you pay for it? If they don't pass, you're going to have to cut programs. Yes, if we can't put this $850,000 or the $900,000 from the second questions, the money has to come from somewhere. We've been crowding out other things. And at some point, yes, we believe, again, I'm not on finance, so I have to wait to see what the finance comes up with. If the paraprofessional question doesn't pass, then next year, we're prohibited from doing it this year, but next year, then the finance has to figure out, okay, how are we going to pay for that? Because we can't keep losing key paras. We can't. It's just, as Mr. Ryan mentioned earlier, this is not an optional item. This is not tangential. We have to offer these services. We're legally obligated, and the students are absolutely entitled to it. They should be entitled to and have every opportunity that every other student has. And the paras are critical in making that happen. They're essential. It's impossible without them. Wouldn't happen. So again, it's just, how do you pay for it? That's where we come in with, how do we cut programs? What are we going to cut to come up with that same dollar amount to pay for those benefits? Let's see. Oh, you said I crossed the line too, but I addressed that already. Mr. Penn, thank you for your resume again on your expertise. The vestibules are, again, they're called man traps. It's just one layer. It's not the be-all to end-all. There's no one silver bullet that's going to stop bad things from happening. And we're not thinking that active shooters are just waiting around the block to come in here. It could be a shooter. It could be an irate parent. It could be a vendor that we didn't get to vet. It could be a contractor that's working on the roof that has a grudge. I have no idea. But a man trap, when our students are in the building and when the teachers are in their building, that's an essential line of defense. And this is not our call. This is coming from law enforcement professionals. That's a tier 1. Pat Ryan, thank you again for your eloquent speech. I saw your TED Talk too. It was phenomenal. And again, I'm happy that you stayed in district. You said that second grade was kind of a turning point that may have caused you to go out of district. Well, we're certainly happy you're here. I wouldn't have heard your TED Talk, and you wouldn't greet us at every play. So thank you for sharing your story. I know that's not easy, but for somebody who's not good at public speaking, damn, you're pretty good at it. Susan, thank you for sharing your story. Again, your students would go out of district. It's grueling. Being a paraprofessional is a grueling, I wouldn't last 5 minutes. It is a grueling, demanding, thankless job, and we have to come up with a way to keep our top-notch paraprofessionals in districts, and that's what the second question is about. Mr. Heap, full-day kindergarten, you're right. The answer is very simple. Why are you giving up the tuition? Although I love the tuition, it's simply because it's a public school. No other reason. It's a public school. It should be free. If we can't pay for it, if we can't make full-day kindergarten happen, then the full-day kindergarten we're working toward. Tuition free, it's going to be tough. It is going to be tough. Would I like it to be full-day free? Absolutely. Michelle says it's got to be a must. I say, we'll see what the numbers look like. Mr. Smith will tell us what the number looks like. Maybe it's not 7,000. Maybe it's somewhere in between. Maybe it's not zero. I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. But the short answer to your question is, why would you give it up and cry poverty? Because it's a public school and it should be free. I don't know that we're going to be able to afford it, but that's the short answer. Switching completely topics onto sailing, which is a tough transition. But thank you, Mr. Press, for sharing your sailing experience. That was funded for years by the parents, and it's not a cheap sport. And, people may be saying, well, why are you funding sailing? Why are we buying sails and pennies and things like that when you don't have enough money to pay benefits? It's certainly, pennies don't cost $900,000, but the district, the administration, this board, at least past boards, have always supported extracurricular activities because it gives students a sense of community. It gives them a sense of belonging. It gives them a reason sometimes to come to school. One student said, I only come here because of the art classes. Other than that, they had no use for us. But it draws them in, and whatever draws them in, whether it's sailing or art or the performing arts or some athletic, and I don't know what the next extracurricular activity is going to be, but if it gets students connected to the school, I'm all in, even if it costs money, Mr. Heap. I think I addressed all the questions. I'm sure Dr. LaSousa and Mr. Smith want to either correct me on things or add to it. So Dr. LaSousa, we'll go to you, and then Mr. Smith, can we jump to you? Oh, and then Peter, I'm sorry. Yes, Vicki, I'm sorry. And Peter.
Now? Thank you. I don't have very much to add. That was a very thorough response, Ms. Weber. I do want to thank several of the parents who recounted their experiences with our paraprofessionals, though. Very powerful. And a reminder about why some of us are in this business to begin with. So thank you. I will reiterate something I said at the last meeting, and you just did the same, Ms. Weber, but I mentioned a slide at the beginning of this meeting in my presentation that I created in February of 2012. And when I created that slide, we did not have a single security staff member or police officer in the district. We have 8 now. We had, I think, 6 cameras all at the main offices of our schools. Now we have 290. We did not have cybersecurity measures in place because there wasn't such things as ransomware and malware that were hitting schools literally every year in New Jersey. And I've got colleagues whose districts had to shut down because of such. We didn't have electronic access systems at the doors of every school in the district. I could go on and on. The point is that the crowding out effect is real. These are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenditures that were not present 10 years ago when I gave the presentation in February of 2012. And they take away and divert resources from educational ones. So the structure of the question is deliberate in that it helps us immediately respond to and help secure the entranceways of our buildings, but it also enables us to continue to fund and expand funding because, like Captain Penn noted, we're always going to be one step trying to catch up with what's happening in the realm of student and staff safety and security. So I just wanted to reemphasize that. But other than that, I think that you addressed every other point that was made. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sousa. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, you addressed everything very well, is just to reiterate the fact that we left taxes for the 5th year in a row at 2%. Because of inflation this year and because of what happened to healthcare costs, we could have gone higher. We could have funded these things in the budget. We could have figured out a way to do it. We could have made cuts and we could have put taxes above 2% and funded these things. But we decided to keep taxes at 2%, given everyone in town is faced with the burden of inflation and high costs and lack of work, et cetera, and to go to the taxpayers on the two items that we really, truly need to be funded. And we've talked about it at this point for months on end, and I think we've been very transparent and fiscally prudent in doing that.
Oh, great. Anybody else?
Oh, and I'll leave it to Peter DeQuilla if you wanted to. I don't know the exact question about that 710, those ESSA funds.
Yeah. Item B10 on the business agenda is to amend the grant and reallocate funds that were already given to the district during COVID. The reallocation allows the district to utilize the funds as they were needed to fund a salary plus benefits for one individual and to fund the HVAC improvements that were done through the funding.
Thanks, Peter. Mr. Ryan or anybody else? Do you have any comments? Any additional comments or?
Yeah, I just wanted to address one thing. Your summary of the residents' comments was I mean, I don't know how you do that, by the way, but
I take
that was very good. One thing you didn't mention was there was a comment made that, you know, this is not a mental hospital. And I think, you know, there's a lot of things that we can't share for privacy reasons, but people don't understand because you don't have the benefit of knowing what we know. You don't know what's happening with some of the kids in our schools. We do, right? We can't educate them if they're not here. And worse, we definitely can't educate them if they're dead.
Nick, I'm sorry. So as a parent, you know, the first thing when my child leaves home, it's their safety, both physical and mental. I think the comment about like school's purpose is only for education, leave security and mental health, or I don't know, security to the police department and mental health to the hospital is just unrealistic. And today's day and age, we live in a society and a time where the requirement for security and mental health is completely different from 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and 40 years ago. And what does that translate to? It's the cost. And it's really a simple math problem. And put it even simpler, it's a simple addition problem. The numbers don't add up. And that's really what we are asking here.
Thank you, Dr. Zhang. Any other comments? Yeah. Oh, Riley, here you go.
I sit here on these meetings and I don't say much, but one thing I do always talk on is mental health. And if you've been here before, I'll say it time and time again. If you believe that mental health should not come before education, you should be lucky that it wasn't your child. I'll say it again, it was my parents' child, it was me. I used to avoid coming to school, I was filled with anxiety, and I couldn't get the education that I deserved. We're about giving everyone an equal education, and I couldn't get that because I wasn't able to focus and I wasn't able to learn the way that other kids did. So for mental health services to be more accessible now, I think the comment was COVID's over, mental health is not over. Mental illnesses will not be over. It might have taken the pandemic for us to realize that it was more of a problem, but it's not going away anytime soon. And anything, it being more acknowledged is more of a benefit to our district than a con.
Great, thank you, Riley. Appreciate it. Any other comments from any of the administrators or board members? Sorry, I apologize, I can't see. It's bad, I can't hear, I can't see. Okay, great. So that was heavy, but thank you everybody for your comments. So it's great that people come out, right, debate it, talk about it. Questions give us an opportunity to explain why. And if we can't explain why, then we shouldn't be here. Okay, so we do have another opportunity at the end for public commentaries if something comes up, and we will be talking during board business, just ratifying the teacher's contract. Oh, they left. But we will vote on that as part of board business. So.
Motion for Riley to go home and study for her exam she has.
Do you have an exam, really?
Yeah, I do have a test tomorrow.
Off you go.
Okay.
You're out of here.
Oh, thanks, Ann. I didn't realize that. Should have just left. Thank you. I second the motion. Out you go. Very good. So we're going to move on to the action items, and it won't take us too long. Again, these are posted on Friday, so if folks want to look at them ahead of time. We'll get through this. We'll go into board business, talking about the teacher's contract, and then we will have a second opportunity for public comments. So Ann, over to you for personnel.
Yes. I'd like to move action items A1 to A20 on the regular agenda, and then A4, 13, 16, 18, and 21 on the addendum.
Nick, thanks. 2 quick comments. First off, we have 2 retirements, and they're 2 of the good ones who we would rather not see leave. Ines is a Spanish teacher at the high school, terrific teacher, and Megan has been a right-hand woman in our student support services offices. 2 tremendous people. And then a little further on in the agenda, we have the appointment of 2 security staff, district security staff members. That will help us fill out coverage in our schools while we're waiting for the police to onboard whoever they can get our way in terms of Class 3. So 2 things to note.
Excellent. Did we get a second yet, Peter, on this? Oh, thank you. Mike, just a quick question. Like, you put resignations. Like, what if we vote no? Nothing?
I don't think that'll work.
Okay. I just thought I'd ask. Well, then we'll vote yes and wish them well in their retirement. Peter, would you mind?
Sure. Agenda items A1 to 20 and addendum items 4, 13, 16, 18, and 21. Ms. Ciccarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro.
Yes.
Ms. Kenny.
Yes.
Ms. Ross.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Dr. Zhang.
Yes.
And Ms. Weber.
Yes.
Agenda items pass 8-0.
Excellent. Mr. Smith, would you take us away with finance and facilities?
Yes, I'd like to move B1 to B20 to a vote and highlight a number of donations we have. The Chatham High School Athletic Booster Club gave us a generous donation of $8,000 and change to fund the cost of portable pop-up tents for inclement weather for home and away athletic events. We have a donation from the Chatham Middle School PTO of $5,000 to be used to purchase and install information screens in multiple locations. A donation from the Lafayette Avenue School PTO for the installation of a water bottle filling station in the cafeteria, and a donation from the Southern Boulevard School PTO in the amount of $51,000 for installation of new backboards, rims, and electric work for the motorized operation of the units at the school. So thank you very much. We love our donations.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions on any of those items? Nope. Okay, Peter, would you mind?
Sure. Agenda items B1 through B20. Ms. Ciccarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro.
Yes.
Ms. Kenny.
Yes.
Ms. Ross.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Dr. Zhang.
Yes.
And Ms. Weber.
Yes.
Agenda items pass 8-0.
Excellent. Over to curriculum, Ms. Ross.
Sure, I'd like to move action items C1 to C5 on the regular agenda.
I'll second.
Excellent, thank you. I just wanted to thank Dr. Sorrentino, Dr. Donahue and Dr. LaSousa for bringing interns back in, student interns to the district, and especially in LDTC. I mean, those are fantastic. Hopefully they come work for Chatham when they're done with their studies. Feel free to apply any pressure necessary to make that happen within the confines of the law. Peter, would you mind?
Sure. Agenda items C1 through C5. Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro?
Yep.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Zhang?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items passed 8-0.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you very much. Mr. Ryan, any audibles on policy?
No, nothing at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. So the one item that I mentioned earlier, I gave a little teaser on, was the ratification of the collective bargaining agreement for the teachers, the Board of Education. So the CEA is represented, it represents the teachers, the paraprofessionals, secretaries, and other staff throughout the district. And over the past 9 months, the negotiation team of the board and the CEA have worked diligently and collaboratively to reach an agreement that is fair and it's responsible. Ms. Noonan called it a strong agreement. I'd like to thank the members of the board who served on the negotiation team, myself, Mr. Smith, and Mr. Ryan. I also would like to thank Beth Grant, who's down here on my right, Mr. DeQuilla, Dr. LaSousa, for all of their time and commitment to the process. As I said, it's very arduous, and everybody wants to get to a good place, and it just takes time. Their hard work, their patience, their diligence. And again, it's impossible to please everybody in pretty much every situation during the lengthy negotiations, but all parties work together respectfully, cooperatively, in a manner to achieve this final deal. Again, everybody was rowing in the same direction, trying to get to a good place. Just to cover the primary aspects of the agreement, it's a 5-year contract at 3.4% of an annual increase. There's going to be additional investments in the salary guide for teachers at each of the first 3 levels of the agreement in order to make starting salaries more attractive. Again, each teacher is on a guide, a grid, and if we can make the starting salaries more attractive, it will help us attract new teachers to the district. There was also some reductions in the health benefits, some extra duty stipends and other areas that saved about $200,000 annually. And there was an increase in coaching and advisor positions also to attract and retain some of those key positions. So last Tuesday, as the co-presidents mentioned, the CEA ratified the agreement, and the board now must vote on it in order to solidify it, so we have to do the same here. So I would like to make a motion to ratify the agreement. I need a second. Second, there we go. Any additional discussion on this? Thank you, Beth, for all your work. I know you, again, you're a 16, 18-hour day gal, so is your team. Any additional comments or question? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? There you go, Peter.
Duly noted, the CEA agreement is approved on an 8-0 vote.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have anything additional for board business that's not in the agenda? And before we get to the second public commentary, just a quick question. Dr. LaSousa, do we have an executive session?
Yes, it'll be brief and action may be taken.
Action may be taken. Okay, great. And we'll just meet in the band room there. If there's no additional board business, we're going to move over to our second opportunity for public commentary. Again, if you could just go up to the microphone and sign in and reintroduce yourself if you don't mind, that would be helpful.
Libby Hilsenrath, Chatham Borough. First is a question. I think that health insurance, whether it's employees or paraprofessionals, is one of the exceptions to the 2% cap. I think at the last meeting, Bradley Smith said we could have raised taxes from 2% to 3% within your limits, but instead we're raising them from 2% to 4.5%. So I think health insurance for paraprofessionals would qualify for an exception. So please answer that question and correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm here to encourage the public to vote no on the first question on the ballot regarding security. So since March, when the budget was introduced, the board has changed its mind multiple times on what they will use the permanent tax increase money for on question 1 for the security vestibules. First, it was for various capital outlays. Then it was for ongoing security measures. Then it included such things as first aid kits. That was in your August newsletter. Now it includes hiring personnel relating to, quote, acute mental health and violence risk assessments at approximately $100,000 per hire. That was in the presentation from the last meeting. None of these things are listed on the interpretive statement that will be on the ballot that voters will see. According to our Board of Education, people should go to the website and attend meetings in order to find out what they will be spending the money on. I don't call that transparency at all. Also, the board has yet to explain, which is in the interpretive statement, what the, quote, fortification of the building perimeters at all 6 schools will entail. So I'd like to hear an explanation about that tonight as well. But with so many changes as to what the money will be spent on, how the board will actually use the permanent tax increase money going forward, and how the board will ensure that the public know that they're spending it on what they say they will. There's no transparency or accountability there. And if the questions don't pass, how will you ensure the safety of our students and staff? Therefore, I would encourage the public to vote no on the second question, or question 1 on security, and say that the board should go back to the drawing board and find the money out of the $86 million of taxpayer money that you have. By changing your mind at every turn, you're basically asking the taxpayers to write you a blank check in perpetuity. Thank you.
Bob Patton, Chatham Borough. I promise not to give you my resume again. I'm really not that fond of giving it anyway. But when I was an educator, I was a disciplinarian, and I worked with at-risk kids quite a bit. So in terms of mental illness, here are some pretty ugly statistics that you should be aware of. And you have to realize not every kid the reality is not every kid comes from a nurturing, loving relationship. So yeah, a lot of times school is the only safe haven, and that can result in certain forms of mental illness. And what you have to realize is that absence of mental illness does not equate to mental wellness any more than absence of disease equates to physical fitness. But here are some of the statistics, okay? Of all the students that are taken to emergency rooms for mental illness episodes, only 56% do not receive follow-up treatment. Suicides are the second leading cause of death in ages 5 through 18 and cause more deaths than the next 9 categories put together. 40% of hospital visits for youth suicide are ages 5 to 12. That's kindergarten through 6th grade. Imagine a kindergartner at a point where they're taking their life. At least 1 in 5 youths ages 9 to 17 currently have a diagnosable disorder causing some degree of impairment. 1 in 10 has an impairment causing significant, issue causing significant impairment. Yet only 1/3 of adolescents ages 9 to 17 that has a diagnosable disorder receives treatment. 1/3. Half of all serious disorders start by age 14, but treatment does not begin on average for another 6 to 23 years. 50% of all lifetime mental illnesses begin by age 14. Most common mental illnesses in adolescence are anxiety, mood disorders, attention deficit disorders, behavioral disorders. Behavioral therapy can take 12 to 20 sessions, 45 minutes each, to realize a 50% improvement. Nearly a quarter of the U.S. population, that's adults, everybody, suffers from a diagnosable mental disorder in any given year.
Are we close, Bob?
Half-
Can you wrap it up?
Yeah.
Thanks.
There's just two more things. Half struggle with the mental challenges their entire life. And 80% of teens taking their lives give some type of warning signs, which can differ from individual to individual. No, schools are not mental institutions, but they are places of mental wellness where they can experience healing. We don't kick kids to the curb because they're having issues. I had 1,000 kids in my school in 2 grades. 100 of them were at significant risk for suicide, and there was 1 crisis counselor. If you think that kids out are getting the mental health treatment, the care that they need, think again. And a Harvard study showed that toxic stress in youth actually causes it causes a what's the word I'm looking for? It causes a detrimental effect on the brain, but it's not irreversible. So by the schools providing the kind of care that these kids need, that's reversible. It doesn't have to affect their learning throughout their lifetime. So absolutely, is mental wellness, taking care of these kids emotionally and mentally, is that a priority of education? You're damn right it is.
Thanks, Bob.
Great, thanks, everybody. Okay, we're going to close. I don't see anybody else. We're going to close the, are you okay if we close, Vicki? Okay, great. So we're going to close the public commentary, and Mr. Smith, I don't have an answer for the exception 2%. On the other items of non-transparency, I just encourage people to read the newsletter that went to every mailbox, and I think we covered the rest of those topics. We get it. You're a no vote. Understood. Check. But I don't have an answer. I don't personally have the answer on the health insurance for paras being an exception. Mr. Smith, do you have information on that? Or Mike? Sorry.
The providing benefits anew to paraprofessionals does not qualify for the exception to the health insurance waiver. The health insurance waiver is calculated based on our current expenditure for health insurance, the amount of increase we have relative to the state health benefits plan. And we explored actually if there was a way we could be awarded any type of exemption or waiver for that type of increase if we were to move down the road of providing health benefits to a greater percentage of the staff. And the answer was no. So.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Penn, thank you again for your support and sharing your experiences. You know, as Mr. Ryan said, the alternative is unthinkable. It's unacceptable, the alternative to not taking care of the students' well-being. It's just unacceptable. So we're going to continue on that path. We're going to continue with those priorities, and we're going to continue to do the best we can. Is it always going to be right? If it's not, we'll fix it. But we're going to continue to do the best we can for the district, for the students, for the residents. So that's the end of the, I'm sorry, does anybody else have any comments or questions to wrap it up? Nope. Seeing none. Okay, so if the board would stick around, thank you, everybody, for your attendance, for listening. I appreciate it. Drive safely going home. Did I say something wrong, Ann? You're looking at me funny. Okay, good. Okay, great. Thank you.